Nice hair, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
I love it. Uh, Darren, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to meet with us and discuss this monumental and cult musical masterpiece, Repo the Genetic Opera. And as you can see, you have quite a lot of fans that came to admire you and your work. Some in
Thanks.
costume.
So, you're under cult musicals. Can I call you Mr. Musicals?
Oh, I would adore that.
Okay, Mr. Musicals, just so I'm out of curiosity, what are you using this interview for?
Just for fans to see.
Oh, okay. So it'll be posted on your cult musicals site or, your socials and all that?
Yes, sir, and I can tag you as well.
Okay.
And you see some familiar faces with Jenna, who runs Radio Repo.
I know. I saw her. Hi, Jenna.
Hi there. For those of y'all who don't
Hi.
know me, my name's Jenna. I am the director of the Radio Repo Shadowcast at Washington College, which Darren attended our debut performance of. So again, so excited that that happened. Thank you so much. I'm still not over it. Longtime Repo fan, and this is Zane. He's my best friend. He's tagging
Hi.
along.
And then we have some other Repo fans. But before we get started, just to ask you questions, where did Repo the Genetic Opera, because you wrote the original stage play, where did the idea of this musical come from? Because it's so original.
Oh, well, thank you. It was a confluence of some of my thoughts and some of Terrence's thoughts. We wanted, I had an idea based on, um, something to make a long story short here, or a short story long. I had come up with this idea of like wanting to repo organs and buy it on credit and that whole thing. I thought it was silly and fun and whatnot. And at the same time, we were doing 10-minute operas, me and Terrence, and he had an idea for a grave robber, and initially it was like going to be like in the 1800s, so kind of Victorian time grave robber. But the idea was the same, in that the grave robber saw the underbelly of society, was really cynical, that kind of a thing, just like as we know and love the grave robber today. So, I suggested we meld the two, set it in the future, and that came about. And then we did a 10-minute opera, which basically, if anybody's seen or heard The Necro Merchant's Debt, yeah, so just very pared down, simple story about what happens to the grave robber. But what did happen was that we were doing a series of 10-minute operas in rock clubs throughout LA. And this was just one of them. I mean, we had one where we're doing like one was called the Viennese Underbelly. We were doing it like 18th century powder wigs, doing something like that. We had another one that was, uh, well, I don't know. That's another story. But we had five others. And this Necro Merchant's Debt was everything everybody loved the best, especially when at these tiny little coffee clubs, sometimes Terrence would be yelling graves right into the microphone. Graves! And it would just, it would crack us up too, but people loved it. So I had a friend who did a stage show and did a theatrical run in LA for $10,000. And I thought, well, that's doable. I mean, we don't have 10 grand lying around, but we could find the money and do it. So we did. We booked the John Raitt Theater in 2002. And at that point, we had 3 months to actually write the second half of the show. And we had already workshopped the first act live at various places throughout LA. So that's my long-winded answer to your question.
Well, it's so beloved and so original. And I'll let my co-host speak, but I just wanted to say that it must be great as a writer and a composer to see something that you created to be so loved and so honored, and it becomes its own religion of sorts. So I would just wonder to know how it makes you feel that Repo, the Genetic Opera, is finally getting its just dues and it has a devoted family behind it.
And it what? What was the last thing you
A
said?
devoted fan base and it have become like a devoted family.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's humbling. It's a great feeling, especially because with any musical, any movie, if anybody's made them, like you're putting in 10,000 hours of work, and people will judge your film, and maybe that's one time they see it and it's gone, and they don't really understand all the things that went on beneath. But of course, with Repo, I mean, the fans, first of all, they seem to know more about some of the aspects of the production than I do. And I was there when we filmed. But then, secondly, I mean, here we are, what, 15, 17, 18, I don't know, years later. And now we have this new generation of folks here because I don't know if any of you were like of age when the thing came out in 2008.
I graduated high school the year that it came out.
Okay, okay. Jenna, you were pretty young, right?
2008. Yep, I was 5.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
How about the rest of you guys?
How old were you
Well,
guys when Repo came out?
I think for me, I was about 17 to 18 when it came out. And I mean, I only watched it because I was just getting into like movies like Rocky Horror and gothic based musicals. But when I saw that, it felt very gothic to me. But years later, it's almost kind of like I'm coming back and rewatching it, and I'm like, holy crap! I never realized how prophetic that movie was, and I love it
Yeah.
now again. Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say it's prophetic because so much of the material in the film, I mean, compared to the 10-minute show, the film itself really was a commentary of what the future today actually is like. Because the story begins with an epidemic. We lived through COVID, and the gene co is like the big corporations. The Largos are like these powerful, rich families who literally are exploiting other people's health. And the opera is literally media events that are meant to distract the people. And the only reason I noticed is because there was a scene where there were protesters outside of the opera. And so I just had a big epiphany watching it because we literally are living the film right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I hope that we weren't the cause of all this mess. I like to think we were the inspiration for that show, Succession. And I don't want to take, yeah, yeah, I like that. I love that show. But I don't want to take credit for this whole Trump family, which of
Oh,
course, we got the same kind of bullshit, right? Yeah.
it's we were Jordan and I were discussing that. I never saw it until she pointed out that it's basically Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivana.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But we'll give you your flowers on that, and we'll tell you how cult musicals always predict the future. Mary Puffins and Nadine are itching and scratching to talk to you.
We sure are. So I wanted to lead with a joke. I'm not sure if you've heard it. If you have, feel free to finish it. How did Blind Mag feel about leaving GeneCo?
I don't
He
know.
was on the fence about
Oh, that's
it.
good. I like that.
um, I was fortunate enough to be able to see the screening at Ithaca College because it premiered there as well when it was coming out in theaters. And there was a lot of hype on the Ithaca College campus. And one of my
Where,
questions
excuse
for
me,
you about,
where? At Ithaca College?
yeah.
Okay, that's where my mom went to Ithaca College. My
Oh,
dad
okay.
went to Cornell. That's how they met. So that's funny.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it was it was a really big deal.
a couple of the producers actually went to Ithaca College. The Saw people. That's how they know each other. So sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
Oh no, it's fine. I was gonna say one of my other questions was there was hype promotional material that got released on, I think it was YouTube, and it was Zydrate Anatomy and Mark It Up. And I was thinking about how great those two particular pieces were for building hype about the story and the show without actually giving too much away. And I was wondering who was the person that decided that like those were the two songs that we were gonna do early release for.
That's a really good question. I don't know. As far as Mark It Up, I think with Zydrate, we all kind of felt like that seemed to be the strongest and most representative. So, because we didn't want to release something like, I don't know, I didn't know I'd Love You So Much, for example. I liked the song, but if somebody saw it out of context and then they expect the musical to be a certain way, they'd probably be disappointed. Whereas I think with Zydrate, and that you kind of know what you're getting into. I think the same way about Mark It Up, and but I don't remember anybody making that decision about Mark It Up. I'm glad they did though.
Me too, me too. I also wanted to ask, there's a story, and I'm not sure if it's true, so I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. Um, there's a story on the internet that is when Paris Hilton wanted to audition for the role of Amber Sweet, apparently, according to lore, right? Nobody wanted her to read for the part. They were like, ugh, Paris Hilton, who cares, blah. And that, the agent like begged, and then she read for the part, and then everyone was like, oh, well, of course, we have to. She's perfect for it. And I was just wondering if that story's true.
It is. It's absolutely true. We did some auditions for that role. We got people like people who are in that band, the Pussycat Dolls. We got some other people I won't mention, but none of them were right for the part. And Paris Hilton, according to Darren Bousman, because he had talked to her, she was really into it. He claims, I don't know if it's true either, but he claims that this is what around the time that she was in jail on her driver's license problem. She got jailed, and she claimed that she please keep the role open till I get out of jail on Monday, and I'll come. Now, right before she came into audition, um, there was a discussion, me, Bousman, and Terrence, that was like, let's let her audition. But, Paris Hilton, especially back then, there was a lot of like baggage that came with that. And she was derided as an actress, blah, blah, blah. And then we were worried that her appearance in the film would override, would be like a distraction, I guess, to the real movie. The problem was, and not a problem, but a good thing, is that when she came to get there with the audition, she wanted this part bad. She was the only person auditioning for that role who actually memorized the song "Come Up and Try My New Parts." So she was just awesome. So then when she left the building, and the three of us just went round the horn like, come on, man, she's the best. Like she just nailed the part. But do we want all this, circus? So the rest is history. That being said, it was a circus. We did the movie. Many of you might know it was done on in a recording studio first in L.A. And what the people largely are doing in the film is lip syncing to their own performance that they had done. So when we were in the LA studios, in the front and in the back of the studio, which is an alley, that's where all the paparazzi were. There was like a hounding of whenever she come and go, there was like people taking pictures. She gave me a kiss goodbye one time. They got all these pictures taken, and had to call my wife and say, if you see something on TMZ, it's not what you're thinking. I'm holding her pillow and kissing her goodbye, but that's it. But yeah, there was that discussion to answer your question. That part is true.
That's
And Darren,
amazing.
Can I say, and not to be too deep, but I think there's something really profound about her playing the role of Amber Sweet because of the family that she came from and how
Mhm.
derided and attacked she was in the media. I think it was probably cathartic for her to play a character like Amber Sweet, which was like the anti-Paris. And I've always found that to be quite, it had to have been cathartic for her to play a role like that because it was basically she was playing a heightened version of herself in the media's eyes, which I always thought was amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I never heard her articulate as much, but I would suspect that she was um, trying to take that image head on and make fun of it rather than run from the image.
Mary, Mary's dressed as Shiloh, as you can see.
Had to do something right. I happened to have the ruff and the pin and the wig, and I was like, well, it's clearly. I watched it in 2008 as well. Actually, my mom found it first because
Hmm.
we used to watch Buffy like religiously. Love Buffy so
Mhm.
much. And she was like, Giles is in this. You got to see it. I was like, all right, mom. And that was around, I think, right after she'd found Dr. Horrible, which I fell in love with as my favorite musical. So it was like right after that. So I'm like, all right, she found Dr. Horrible. She's probably right. We both went crazy over it. Okay. I loved it. The aesthetic was amazing. And I loved seeing Anthony Stewart Head as like this badass killer, you know?
Yes.
It was great. And I really like the whatever filter that you guys used on it. I don't know. I dug it. I dug it a lot. So it was a very aesthetically and musically appealing. I just everything about it caught me. I sang the music all the time. You know what I mean? It was
Same though.
Yeah,
yeah, it was really
Same
good.
though.
that's good
Darren,
to
was
hear.
there any reason that you all aesthetically chose that iconic filter to do over the film?
Yeah, the um now that's a question that would be better explored to Darren Bousman, but as far as the actual filter is concerned, we wanted to make a world and get people into a world and know that it's different from anything. Also, we did have an $8 million budget, but when we wrote the screenplay, it goes to a production people to say, okay, based on what your screenplay is, how much is it going to cost? It was $40 million was the thing they came to, so we had to pare it down the number of scenes, so we're basically in a soundstage, and if you see the pictures of us making it and it's not with the filter on, it's clear that it's a sound stage. So I guess to answer that question, it's a necessity that we had to put a filter, which honestly, I think that was fine. Says again, we're going into a world, and this is a world that should have its identifiable visual aesthetic.
And it's iconic, as everyone can agree. It's become synonymous with Repo the Genetic Opera.
Mm.
And then Hades, and then we'll end with Jenna and Zane, the iconic Repo fans. Hades?
Yeah, I'm Hades Nuts. It's nice to meet you. The first time I saw Repo was in my 20s, but I was 18 when it came out. So, I
Okay.
mean, of age when it came out. I'm not a young whippersnapper, I suppose. And naturally, as any, young, teenage, adjacent, like 20-year-old, Repo became my personality for a short period of time after I discovered it, naturally. Um, I think some of my biggest questions I would have is first, I had heard that Zydrate was not always the name of the drug. Was it a different name as well, like to begin with, and then it got changed?
It was. Basically, I got the idea that it should start with Z because I can't remember what it is, but in the concentration camps, the death camps, there was some, I can't remember, there's a chemical that they use, this horrible thing, and it started
Yeah.
with a Z. So I like the Z. We called it Zitrate
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire show that we did on in LA and in New York. But when the lawyers got a hold of it for the production of the film, they said, well, there is a citrate, so you're gonna have to change the name. So that's why that name was changed. We
That's
also
really
had a name who was Amber Sweet. No, it was Heather Sweet initially. And then we decided we don't want to get sued here because we knew a Heather Sweet and we actually had modeled at least some of her behavior on it. And you might as well know that. And if you don't, that person went on, she was in her acting class. She went on to change her name to Dita Von Teese.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, so we all met in the same acting class, me and Terrence and then Stephanie, who was our first Shiloh. But yeah, Amber's, we were like, okay, we don't want to get, because if that's her real name and we're patterning it and she knows that we would have known her, we're just like, we don't need that kind of headache. So that's why we changed it to Amber.
What an
Oh, I love that.
exclusive.
Yeah. Wow, that's really awesome. I'm going to let our other co-hosts speak before I have more questions answered. So thank you.
Sure.
Jenna and Zane. Or
What's up,
Zydra.
Darren? It's so lovely to see you again. And
Hey.
just want to say thank you so much for repping Radio Repo at Sinister Creature Con. That was literally the coolest thing ever. And this
One of
is
my
Zane. He's
favorites.
my best friend who's never seen Repo, but I thought this
I'm
would be
the
a
new guy. And yeah, I just wanted to say to you, Darren, when you referenced seeking out Paris Hilton, I'm an actor, and that being coveted for a part like that is like dream come true, and it reminds me of just why I pursue it to begin with. Just
Yeah,
just to
man.
get an opportunity to work on the most amazing just projects.
Yeah.
And I recently achieved a major actor create career breakthrough working at my Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando. And
Okay.
that is kind of like the way I bet you chose Paris for Amber. I empathize a lot with that, and it's just and also with the way it originated from Terrence's opera mini operas. It only gets me more fascinated to explore
I can't
this.
wait to show him the
I-
actual movie.
I am
cannot wait.
Yep. And I already have the background of cult musicals like Phantom of the Paradise, Rocky Horror. So
We're good. We're good.
yeah,
Good,
that's
good.
what I wanted to
Those are-
say. So, but it's amazing to meet you and get a chance to discuss this.
Yeah,
I'm
especially
just
with co-creator and a Repo veteran. Well, a Repo veteran as you can be when you first watched the movie in 2016. But I am super dedicated.
I definitely know that, Jenna.
Yeah.
I love the shirt. I mean, that's one of my
Yeah,
favorite.
I know. I actually do have like two questions for you. One of them is absolutely an ego stroking question, and the other one's like a more serious one. So let's
Okay.
start with the ego one first.
How good am
I saw
I?
you wear Reppin' Radio Repo at Sinister Creature Con, which, by the way, thank you. All of us at Radio Repo, we love to see it and see you talk on the panel about Repo while repping the shirt with Terrence. It was awesome. So my ego stroking question is, did Terrence like recognize the sort of Radio Repo branding? Like what was his reaction to it? Did he know it was me? Because we also know each other.
Um, I think so. I don't know. We didn't talk about it right in advance before we got
Ah,
in the
gotcha. Makes
paneling.
sense,
So
makes sense.
I don't know, but I think he definitely knows who you are. So that
Yeah.
makes
oh my god! Oh my god!
Yep,
Oh shit!
yep.
I squeed.
We all squee on this repo, man. It's not a big deal. Okay, but my second actual serious question is coming from somebody who's a repo veteran and getting my repo newbie to watch it with me, do you have any advice of sort of like easing somebody into sort of the cult that repo has built up over the years?
Well, you really stumped me because my first response is some kind of flip, smarmy answer about the kind of drugs you need to take to get into the
Oh,
thing. But that requires a more serious response. Um, I do tell people when they've never seen it before that it's an opera. It's an operetta in a sense. So don't expect it's going to be a musical where they're just talking about how what a good morning it is, and then suddenly they go and burst into song. Right. Well, what a beautiful morning. Right, exactly. So that I think people really need to know that right off the bat. So that's probably the main thing.
Gotcha. I will definitely keep that in mind. Me and Zane are definitely going to be watching this together really soon. Seriously, thank you so much for all the support you've given Radio Repo, and we deeply, deeply appreciate it. All of us at the production. Also, CJ DeAngelis says hi.
Yeah, I love CJ. I just saw him. The just as the girl, I mean, all you guys were great. And that girl who played was it Roddy who held that note really long?
Oh,
What's
that
become of
was
her?
Ray. That was he's a dude, just for clarity's sake. But Ray, who is our Nathan, he was spectacular. That Nathan who held
Oh,
that note at the
that's
end
what
of
I'm talking
Pokemon.
about. Okay.
Yeah,
That
that's
was the
Ray.
longest held note that I think I'd
Yeah.
ever heard, at least from a repo person. I thought
Oh, yeah.
she
It took
studied
us a
circular
long time to
breathing.
really rehearse all of that. So I'm super
Yeah.
proud of Ray and by extension, everyone in the cast.
Yeah, good, good.
Darren, I wanted to ask you what musicals, specifically cult musicals, were you inspired, if any, by growing up? Or were you ever inspired by any cult musicals that we love?
Yeah, I mean there's a reason that we used our log line to try to sell the project as a cross between uh Rocky Horror and Blade Runner, since we're fans of Rocky Horror. We I tend to like more operettas like the Andrew Lloyd Webber stuff than like a Rodgers and Hammerstein thing. Because again, and I love the music of Richard Rodgers, by the way, but I think like I just always just have a problem with it takes me out of an experience to have somebody act and then they suddenly burst into song, unless there's a reason for it, like something's supposed to be a stage. The plot is they're putting on a musical or something like that. So it's intrinsic that they would actually burst into song. But yeah, mentioned a Phantom of the Paradise. You know, we watched every single cult musical we could find. We watched just because we knew that we wanted to do it opera style, partially because I don't know, we thought it was kind of funny, really. We watched every single like opera, filmed opera that we could possibly find, to do that. So yeah, we love musicals. I love musicals. I think that I like them when they're a little bit heavier than, than the Disney musical or something like that.
And yeah, because I mean, Repo has now, perfectly fit in with Rocky Horror and Phantom and Shock Treatment and Hedwig and the
Mhm.
Angry Inch. And so it must be a great feeling. I know you're humble, but it must be a great feeling for you as a writer that your musical has now fit within the genre of the cult musical and has a devoted fan base with Shadowcast. So I can only
It
imagine
really,
how that feels for you.
yeah, it really does. And in fact, I neglected to mention Hedwig because, Terrence and I saw a stage show of Hedwig, and this was before the movie of Hedwig the Angry Itch came out. But we were just blown away, and our takeaway from that thing was that you can be funny and fun and over the top and crazy, but you can also be highly emotional within that world. And when we saw that stage show, it wasn't John Cameron, it was somebody else who played the Hedwig. But all I know is that you would almost cry when he was talking in between the songs about what it's like to be Hedwig. And here, you'd think on the face of it, if I'd never seen Hedwig before and somebody described it to me, if somebody said, "Oh, there's really serious and emotional moments," I'd probably think like that's crazy. But it isn't, because the realities for Repo that we wanted to convey was, yeah, we're two crazy, me and Terrence, two crazy, bizarre, guys, but it's not all just funny, ha jokes. That's too easy for us because we got enough inside jokes we could fill like several musicals. But the reality is we wanted something that at least that we felt had some emotional component to it.
And it definitely does. Absolutely. Jordan and then Mary and Nadine, do you guys have any other comments or questions for Darren?
So many, but Jordan hasn't talked yet, so let Jordan go first.
Okay, I'm listening in on all the ideas that when you were trying to like put together the uh, uh, when you mentioned Hedwig and the Angry Inch, I think like for me, I'm a huge like cult musical aficionado, and I now it started with my obsession with Rocky Horror Picture Show, but a lot of people don't realize that sometimes cult musicals are not more than just funny, haha, or having like a whole bunch of big parties, but there's a high when you talk about the whole highly emotional element.
Mhm.
I actually saw that the emotional aspect of Repo was about a father trying to protect his daughter while
Mhm.
knowingly working for an evil, corrupt family that looks to clearly harm her. And I really saw this as a father and daughter story that when I rewatched it again, like when I was about 18 when I watched it, I didn't really pay attention to it because as a teenager, I had a very difficult relationship with my father, and I was like Shiloh. I identified with her at the time. And then as I gotten older and I really started to understand that my dad is a person who would do anything for me, and I understand him now. So rewatching how Nathan cares about about his daughter, and how Shiloh sees it kind of helps me a little bit in reconnecting my relationship with my dad. So I was
Hmm.
wondering, did when it comes to the emotional aspect, did you ever thought that maybe the father and daughter storyline might have reached out to a huge section of fan base who have family related um, relations, something like
Well,
that?
yeah, no, well, thanks for sharing that. And that's a really great question. I'm not sure if I don't think either of us actually really had considered that so much, except I would say this. I was a father, I still am, and my son is about as old as the Necro Merchant's debt. So it's kind of like I can tell how old Repo is by how old he is now. He's 25. So I infused a lot of my own feelings as a parent to really get into to get into the relationship between the father and daughter. It was funny. Obviously, neither Terrence nor I had, we're not teenage girls, so we kind of was a little hard to kind of write from that perspective. But just just kind of going along with that. I'm a huge believer when you write of writing all the backstory, everything you can about a character. And I know there's a lot of people who will tell me, like, well, what's the point? Why are you doing that? That's not going to be in the film. That's not going to be in the story or whatever. Well, that's true, but you need, as the writer, you need this person to be so fixed in your mind that you know what school they went to, that their favorite color, all those kinds of things. So I appreciate that comment because I really feel like we wanted these two characters to really be something we're emotionally invested in and to be really three-dimensional characters.
Thank you for that question. That was a really deep and profound thing. And
Yeah.
there is a lot of depth in your musical. There is a lot of depth. I mean, not only predicting pandemics, but also the relationship between Shiloh and her father. So maybe it's unconscious at the time, or maybe a lot of it's conscious, but I think that's why a lot of people, besides the gore factor and how fun it is, I think that's why a lot of people really gravitate towards Repo, because there is a lot of depth to it and a lot of beauty to it. Nadine and Mary.
Okay, so I've got 3 more questions,
Sure.
but I'll try to make them very short. The first one is, how did Ogre get involved with the project? Did he like come out and audition, or did you guys like reach out to him?
He was friends with Richard Patrick of Filter and of the band. And I think Richard Patrick had auditioned or was interested and he couldn't do it. We didn't give him a part, but we knew he couldn't make it. And so I think it was through that Ogre found out about it. And we had to convince him, like he'd never done acting, so we had to convince him that he's an actor. And there's a great thing because, he's acted since then. And he always tells me that me and Terrence were a great instigator for that part of his life.
That's wonderful. I love that. My second question is, it's like a sort of a 2-part question. It's about the exposition being in comic format and like how you guys came to that decision of doing the exposition in comic book format. And then also there's like a synergy with that, where there's some sort of comic book-esque Foley in certain scenes. Like Mark It Up is probably the best example of like where the Foley's a little bit over the top. And I was wondering if you guys were intentionally using like the comic book feel to be able to push the envelope with the violence a little bit harder.
Well, we certainly were wanting a comic book feel. I'm not so sure I thought that there would be some interconnection between the comic book and the violence, although I think now that you say that, it probably makes violence more palatable when it's more, comic-y or comic book and whatnot. And as to your question about the beginning and use of the comic book, a lot of that had to do with notes that we got by the producers and other people who are watching, and they were like, "We don't understand this. We don't understand that. Blah blah blah." And of course, it's this musical. If you don't get it, then you're gonna watch the whole thing saying, "I hate this thing because I don't know what the hell's going on." So that's the basis behind that. I'm not so sure that was our. To be honest, I don't think that was our first instinct to do because there's a kind of stasis, I think, in the very beginning of the film. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I thought it was really like that there are so many different elements between like the musical and the drama and the like Victorian-esque feel, but also the cyberpunk 77 feel. Like there's a blend of a lot of different types of like media and vibe to create the whole picture that is Repo.
Yeah, and steampunk too.
Yeah, precisely. My last question is a little rough. I have to read it because it's like a little bit of a paragraph, but it's
oh Lord.
For the final opera, the audience is unaware that they're not watching a show, that they're watching real human suffering. Were you hoping we would recognize ourselves as doing the same thing?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a good question. I think that part of the thing was to satirize the spectacle of blood and how we we can compartmentalize it and not really treat people as true human beings. They're just like, they're just bloody stumps or something. So yes, that was part of it. I mean, there's a lot of things in the musical about us satirizing a lot of things from plastic surgery to, all these other things. And I think um, those are just the products of our weird minds, the confluence of me and Terrence. Just this is what we believe and what we think. And, we're constantly like, why is why is this idiot Trump like, clearly no, why should anybody vote for this fool? But then again, you just got whatever. I don't want to call them idiots, but definitely people who don't have good critical thinking skills, and they're also people who don't have a great knowledge of government and politics. So, but that's an aside.
Well, to Nadine's point and your point, it's kind of funny how a few years later we have Botched now as a reality show with plastic surgery and how
Mhm.
we've sort of glamorized and sort of uh, taken the edge off of plastic surgery. And now we've got, influencers and things of that nature. So, I mean, we always say, we always say in this podcast that cult musicals have a way of predicting life. I mean, Shock Treatment, Phantom of the Paradise, Repo.
Mhm.
Our world is much scarier than the world of cult musicals. And I think, Repo sort of, I don't know if it's something that you were just predicting or is something you were just having fun with, but I feel like you were on the pulse of something that is a little bit real for us these days.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, but I think that kind of your comment really goes to the fact that great musicals and great cult musicals oftentimes there's like messages that go beyond, okay, I love the story and the characters and the music. In other words, especially Rocky Horror for its time, this old idea of what it means gender wise and what it means to be able to be accepted. And from different body types, the kind of things that nobody's going out there and preaching, but I think it's a subtext which gives life to that Rocky Horror and why it's still around almost 50 years later. So we did try in Repo to have things that were more thoughtful. Again, if you could change your life and change who you were, would you do it? Those kinds of questions. We didn't want to be preachy or anything, but we did want to have some substance and something that would lead people to maybe at the end of it question certain things, question life beyond questioning our sanity.
It's very deep and profound.
Yeah,
Mary.
well,
Well, now
the,
here's my.
we were
I mean,
very happy, and I think I told you, Jenna, that we did our elevator pitch that we wanted, this is Blade Runner meets Rocky Horror. And
Yeah,
then
I definitely remember this from Radio Repo.
okay, so Rolling Stone magazine does the best, most popular cult films,
yeah.
and we're in between, somewhere in between Rocky Horror and Blade Runner. So
And
we
it's
were happy to
like,
be
that must have
in
been
the,
crazy. That's like poetically ironic in a way, is what I would put it as. Especially since those were your inspirations and the fact that it's sort of ascended to these upper echelons.
yeah, for sure. And of course, I never really thought about Blade Runner as being like a cult thing because it's like a huge film, not like a small one.
Yeah,
But then again, cults can just be things that survive after the
right.
40 years or
Yeah, the way
whatever.
I've always seen it, the cult film is based on the following. So, not
Yeah,
necessarily the movie itself.
right. And that's kind of like we knew because when we were doing the stage show that there were people who are devoting a lot of their lives to Repo. We knew that we're going to have, or at least we hope so, but we were conscious of it, of having a following of people who loved the show. And of course, once the movie was done and it was out, and we were going around the country or around the world really, and seeing all these different people doing their own thing, I felt like it's not only great because it's gratifying for me, but it's great because it makes this a living piece of art rather than a static, this is the movie. That's just the experience. No, that's not just the whole experience because part of the experience is the people who are there in each callback, which is going to be different, the different cultures in each of the cities that who do this. So yeah, I mean, to me, that really is, not to get overly, emotional, but frankly, it is good. I do value the people that who follow Repo. I have many friends from, at this point, 20 years or more and because of Repo. And so it's definitely changed me and Terrence's life um, far more than just a duo that just happened to make a movie, I guess.
And that is so sweet and profound. And honestly, I think the same thing kind of happened in reverse when I was coming up with the idea for Radio Repo, because I've always
Mm.
wanted to do a shadow cast. When I found out about Repo and got into the fandom when I was 13, I was like, I want to do a shadow cast because by that point they'd kind of fallen by the wayside, which I thought was kind of sad at that time. And I really wanted to do something that was sort of beyond a normal shadow cast. It would be bringing this underappreciated, underrated movie that means so much to people and to its creators back into the limelight and giving it sort of this ultimate Shadowcast production that would really just breathe new life into a new generation of Repo fans. And I'm really happy to say that I think I've achieved that goal. And I deeply, deeply appreciate like just Repo changed my life. It changed me. It made me into an artist and an actor and a writer because I wanted to do what you guys were able to pull off. And it just makes me so, so happy that just the thing that you guys have created can influence the trajectory of someone's life. And I cannot thank you enough.
Well, thank you.
Mary.
I was listening to you, but I had to find the plug here for my computer before it
Oh, no,
died.
you're good. I totally get it.
Okay. But in any event, yes, no, I acknowledge what you're saying, and I do appreciate that. And I appreciate that you guys are all here 18 years later.
And I will say, you say that, Rebo and the fans have touched your life, but your work has obviously transcended just a film, and it obviously has become an experience, and it's profound, and it's touched a lot of people. Mary?
Like now my question's lame after all that serious.
No, it's okay.
Because I always want to know like the funny stuff that happened, like the bloopers, but we just talked about all the super serious stuff. So
Well, like the funny stuff that happened on set.
yeah.
Uh, Well, here's one of them. The last two songs that we actually wrote were Zydrate Anatomy and We Started This Opera Shit. And part of the thing when we started this opera shit was, I mean, I'm like, it's my film. I'm gonna write myself a little cameo. So the day before we filmed it, we rehearsed it. So the girls who were the dancers, they showed me like some basic choreography. Um, we started, and that whole big hall that where people are watching the thing was completely empty except Darren Bowsman's lawyer and somebody else. And so it looked especially ridiculous that I'm jumping up and down, blah, blah, blah. I even like picked up the lawyer, but spilled coffee all over her. So it was just absurd. So um, Paul Sorvino said he was up on the stage because that's part of the part. He said, "Can I give you some advice, Kate?" And I'm like, yeah. And he says, "Your acting stinks." And he goes, "You don't know what you're doing out there." And he says, but you can learn, So he's like telling me like, whatever to do such and such and have my motivation at. And I'm like, hey, you know what? He's a great actor. I'll take it from him, even though it's a little bit blunt. So the next day, of course, we have the big crowd, we have all the thing, and we're doing it. And Paul Sorvino was very happy with my performance, like he felt like he changed me. And it was so energetic every single take. I kept feeling like Bousman is purposely trying to torture me, like by running around, I'm out of breath. But the girls, or one in particular who was a dancer, kept telling me these most intense sexual experiences or fantasies that were so like, oh my God, coming from her too. I'm like, she's giving me a new lease on life. Every time I think I'm gonna have a heart attack, she tells me something else that's like, wow, that's great. And then boom, it's like action. So that's one of the stories that comes to my mind from the actual filming.
I was not expecting that at all. I don't think Mary was either. It's hilarious.
No, me neither. I'm just like shocked for a second here.
Hades.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a couple of questions. One is like a straight up spoiler, so our friend who hasn't seen it, cover your ears. So that question is Shiloh Nathan's daughter, or is he Roddy's daughter, or is that kind of almost ambiguous to keep us thinking? Because even though they were married, like the timeline with the comic book stuff, it just kind of blurs together where it could be Roddy's daughter, but she don't want to marry Roddy, so we're gonna keep that, a secret,
I think that we wanted to keep it ambiguous, and especially from the standpoint of Roddy not knowing. That being said, I think we're resolute that actually she is Nathan's daughter.
Okay, okay. Um, and then where did that other question go? Sorry, I took notes. Okay, so the other questions I have are about one's about costuming and then one's about special effects. What was like the major inspiration for a lot of the costuming? And also specifically Amber Sweet's costume for Zydrate Anatomy, was that inspired by Frankenfurter?
I don't, that wasn't my inspiration for it. Whether the costumer actually gained inspiration from it, I'm not sure. Um, I think that a lot of the costuming was a direct result of us doing a comic book of Repo. So we had a lot of visuals. Like it was a comic book for us to sell the film, but it was not so we already knew pretty much what people should look like in this film, what they should wear, and so forth. So, good question about the Frankenfurter. I don't know. I don't. It could be just a coincidence, but I can tell you this much: almost everything there that you see visually was something that we had. Me and Terrence had envisioned over the past maybe 5 or 6 years before the film.
Okay, that's awesome. And then a question about the gore and the special effects. Were those done like with true special effects, or was that like more CGI?
It was more true special effects. Um, all the blood that was actually quite slippery on stage. Um, the, the CGI was mainly for um, the world of Repo, but also specifically like in um, Chase the Morning, for example. I mean, and unfortunately, we showed this film. I don't know why it ever got to the New York Times without being finished with the CGI. So they hated the film, but what I could see why. You see Chase the Morning without superimposition of, all the other people there. It just seems completely and utterly absurd. So the answer to that, yeah, we did CGI, and of course it's way better now than it is back then. But honestly, it wasn't to be like so, it's not supposed to be like life, accurate.
And I will say, Darren, I
Absolutely.
Chase the Morning's my favorite song from the film and from the musical. And Sarah Brightman, to me, to have her, I mean, of course, she's so ethereal and her voice is unmatched by any other opera singer. That must have been mind-blowing to be able to have Sarah Brightman.
It really was, and particularly since we had already started rehearsals for Repo, and the person that we had was an opera singer, and she had to back out because of commitment. So we brought her. She was on tour in Russia, and she came on the very good talking into by our music supervisor. So when she came to audition, Honestly, now I think I'm not sure if she auditioned because, quite frankly, we just know like Sarah Brightman, right? But when she came into the studio, she'd just come 7,000 miles from Russia to come here, and she asked me, she goes, "Excuse me, what is this musical about?" And I'm like, wow, that's a leap of faith, man. You go 7,000 miles, you're a big star. You come over here, you don't even know what you're singing for. So yeah, that was a major thing. I loved working with her. She was great. I worked with her in Hamburg when we were doing some end title music. But the one who sings the Chase the Morning, that's my wife Nancy. And I
Oh,
asked her to
wow.
sing. There's a song called Porcelain by Moby where there's somebody singing. I said, "Can you sing like that?" And my wife, she can sing like anything. Her voice is all over this musical, by the way. That's her. That's not Sarah Brightman. That's her singing that.
I love the back. I've always wondered who that was. I love the background singer for Chase the Morning. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. And you know what? It's all over the internet somewhere. The original Come Up and Try My New Parts with my wife singing it. And I guess it's possible I might have released this unauthorized. I'm not saying I did, but could have.
Allegedly.
But the reality is, I have never worked on a song more than that fucking song. We just did it over and over and over again. Then we're working with the guys in Japan who were like doing some of the recordings. And finally, I didn't feel like Paris, as great as she is, I'm not sure if I felt like she did the song justice in a way that was commensurate with all the work I did on this. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I just was like, they got to hear it the way Nancy sang it. So that's her singing on it.
And
And then
let's conclude, guys, by saying one thing about Repo to Darren about why Repo means so much to you. And then we just personally from the musical and the film, what it means to you. And then we can conclude.
Well, I think the thing about Repo that means a lot to me is that it really knows how to use gothic aesthetic or even just opera as a way to tell a good satire, tell a good drama, tell a good comedy, and tell a good story. And when you tell a story that's deeply prophetic and says so much about us as humans, maybe that's what makes it so good. And for me, I think like back then I used to like love it for its gothic aesthetic, but right now I think the real reason it means a lot to me is because I get to understand my dad more. And also
Hmm.
one more thing, the ending to Repo, do you think it's possible that there might be a sequel or a prequel? Because it would be possible. Just saying.
Yeah, no, if the money's right, I will probably would do one. That's for sure. Or do something that's in the world of repo, like, but thank you for that. I appreciate your comments.
Sorry, I was lost in the Nexus. Hades.
Um, I am a big Paul Sorvino fan, so I think my favorite song, other than all of Roddy's Largos' songs, I love them. I think my favorite one is Gold.
Hmm.
And like it's just you get the richness of his voice, it's chef's kiss, it's just beautiful. I love it. Gold is my favorite song in the whole thing. I absolutely adore the world building that you got going on here. It's like so close to home, yet just far out of reach. It's fantastic world building, amazing songs, and just it's a very good and enjoyable time to watch Repo. So thank you so much for writing that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for saying that. And I love your name, by the way.
Thank you. It's my drag name.
uh, Nadine and Mary.
Okay, you go first this time. Oh, right. I was thinking about it. This movie, I feel like it created an aesthetic after it came out because I know I mentioned the filter before, but it was very poignant and it kind of led to an artistic style that I know I used in my art. So I wanted to thank you for that, even though I said, you kind of, or you said you used the filter because you kind of had to, but I think it worked out really well. And I too am very happy to have seen this musical. It was a very big influence for acting and writing other stuff. So this was a great experience. Thanks for talking to us.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and for me, as an aspiring writer, director, filmmaker type person, I think that part of the reason that Repo is such a perfect is that you and Terrence were really looking around at like the material conditions that you had that were like you were paying attention to reality as it existed at the time. So like the future just naturally unfolds from that point when you're making a story about something that's real, right? That's like inspired by like the world around you. And I think that's my main takeaway from Repo is that you can tell a story that's dark and scary and bloody and gory and still get to like visceral emotional moments and this pervasive sense of like truth and realness in spite of it being like maybe even campy, but riding that line of like camp and horror, like just like really straddling it in a way that I think most other cult movies, they're either camp or they're horror, but Repo is very much both.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's exactly what we were shooting for. So thank you.
And Jenna and Zane, and then I'll conclude with it what it means to me. So it's just about the movie, the musical.
Yeah, first of all, if you ever want to do like a prequel or sequel or something in the Repo-verse, I'm totally down with like reuniting the cast of Radio Repo to be a part of it.
Okay.
But if I may be serious for a moment, Repo was everything to me. I was a baby bat when I first saw Repo just getting into the goth scene, and it truly made me fall down the rabbit hole of not just being a goth, but being a creator in my own right. The visuals, the storytelling, the world building, the aesthetic, the characterization, all of it has come together in order for me to fuel all of my creative projects, even now as I grow and evolve and change after seeing that for the first time and seeing it over, I'm pretty sure I'm past the 500 mark. And just being able to use this as like my main muse for my artwork. And it's like, I've come so far just with the influence that Repo has given me. It's given me the inspiration to tell stories through my own songs. It's given me the motivation to become a professional screenwriter, an artist, a creator of all sorts, just a creator of characters and stories. And it's a wonderful feeling to be able to I can always just point back to the moment I saw Repo when somebody asked me, Jenna, where do you get all of your inspiration? I can just point at Repo and be like, this is the thing that made me fall in love with creativity and storytelling in this sort of gothic, scary way. Radio Repo may be my ultimate tribute as a fan, but my projects and artwork, especially the ones that I have coming up soon, are going to be the ones as a tribute to Repo as a creator. And I cannot thank you enough. And Terrence, CJ, Darren Bousman, everyone involved in the project you guys literally changed my life. I don't know where I would be without Repo today.
Wow.
And then Zane will have an opinion once he sees it.
I want to do a quick plug for my friend Stacy Lane Wilson, who just came out with the book will be released November 26th, I believe. There's pre-orders. This is a book about Repo, the making of Repo. There's a lot of things from me and Bousman and other people. So it's the first of, I believe, three other book projects that people have been talking about interviewing me for. So just big plug. Anybody wants to do it, I think you pre-order on Amazon.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay.
And I just want to say, Darren, that thank you for creating a beautiful masterpiece that sits on the shelf with other cult musicals. Because cult musicals not only give art to the world, but they also give community and friendships. And I guess you could never imagine that when you're creating a cult musical, that it's even going to become a cult musical, but it has. And I just want to thank you for creating something that means so much to people because it continues to live and its audience grows. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And Repo is very nostalgic for me because it came out when I was 18 and I have a very nostalgic viewpoint of that part of my life. So thank you for
Mm.
creating something beautiful. And I will say, despite Repo, will you ever write another musical? Besides the Repo universe, will you ever write something new?
Well, I've been working on something, and quite honestly, after we did Repo, it was so long, it was so involved, it took so many years. I'm not sure either of us were ready to do something, and I know I wasn't. But the reality is, I do have ideas, and I do have something I've been writing on. And I guess because you guys, fans like you guys who are inspiring me, I think, to actually do it. I mean, it's an inspiration to hear what you guys have to say. It's it's humbling. It's great. We're just being Terrence. We're just average guys. We live in LA, but we're not like making the big bucks there, but we survive. And really, like you guys are talking about being creators on your own. You realize that you have to create. It's not like you might, do it if somebody wants to hear it or wants to see it. You have to. So I'm glad you asked that question. Yes, I'm working on stuff, and Terrence and I have a couple um, things in the works, let's put it that way. So yeah, things are coming along, and I'll let you guys know probably the beginning of 2025 what's
That would
happening.
be awesome. I just want to say if you need another actor, I'm game. I can send you like my resume and
Um,
such.
Okay.
Hooray. Yeah.
Darren, the world needs more of your musicals, especially now. The world needs more cult musicals. So
Thank you.
I'm sure whatever you create will sit on the shelf of the repo and all the great cult musicals of the past. But thank you so much for speaking with people who love you and love your work. And it really meant a lot to us.
Oh,
And
that's
please
great.
keep
Thank
us in the
you.
loop.
I will. And I could buy that book for Stacy. So anyway,
What
yeah,
is it?
thanks
What
so
is the
much.
name of it?
I think it's called Blood Saga. That's what it's
Blood
called, Blood
Saga.
Saga. And so I haven't read it either, so I don't know, but I know Stacy Wilson, and she's my writing partner in other projects, so she's fantastic. So I know it'll be good. And I met her through Repo too, so that goes on 18-year friendship now.
I can't wait to read it because whatever new things we can get with Repo. Oh, I guess we'll end with this. Did you ever see The Devil's Carnival? And what were your thoughts about Devil's Carnival and Alleluia?
I haven't seen them. The My thoughts are that I'm sure they're good. I do like the American Murder songs. I'm a huge fan of SAR, so I know anything that's kind of a collaboration between SAR and Terrence are going to be good.
It definitely takes a lot of inspiration from Repo. So you
Mhm.
paved the way. You
Yeah,
definitely paved the
cool.
way. Thank you
Thanks.
so much, Darren. You're awesome. And you mean a lot to so many people.
Well, thanks so much. Goodbye, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.